Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our Wednesday study group. I want to thank Shelley Sifkin, who's sponsoring the class today. This is in honor of her husband's birthday, Harvey Sudolov. We want to wish you, Harvey, a very happy birthday. It should be a year filled with blessings, filled with happiness, and filled with good health. If anyone wants to sponsor any of the upcoming classes, you simply go to chabadconejo.com/sponsor and select whichever class you'd like to sponsor for any special occasion coming up. We have been speaking about the attributes of mercy of God, part of the discussion that Moses has with the Jewish people in the book of Deuteronomy in this final speech of Moses before his passing. And he's reviewing with them the story of the golden calf and how God had mercy on their ancestors and God forgave them and God erased them, erased the sin, and God cleansed the sin, and God reestablished a relationship just as if the sin never happened. And as we've been saying, and even more, and even in a greater way, the relationship comes back even stronger when there was the idea of sin followed by repentance. And then Moses discusses the different attributes of mercy of God. And then one of the difficult subjects that is mentioned, that is discussed, that God is in the pain with us. B'chol tzarosam lo tsar. In all of our tsaris, in all of our pain, in all of our suffering, lo, he, tsar, he also suffers. He cries along with us. He feels the pain with us. And we were talking towards the end of last week's class, is trying to understand how that makes any sense. Because Kabbalah explains to us that there's two different worlds, there's two different planes. There is the hidden world and the revealed world. We live in the revealed world, meaning we feel pain, we experience pain. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, behind the curtain. We don't know what the divine plan may be as to why we're experiencing this pain. So from our perspective, it is painful, it is suffering, there's tragedies. Yes, Kabbalah explains that there is a world called the Alma de Iskasia, the hidden world. And in that hidden world, everything really is good. Because in that hidden world, everything has a purpose, everything is there for a reason. Although we, in the revealed world, we don't understand it. But certainly God does understand it. God is the creator of both the hidden world and the revealed world. And therefore, our question is, how is it that God feels our pain, experiences our pain, if indeed he understands why there is pain, or at times he's the cause of the pain? And towards the end of last week's class, I told you a story about the Baal Shem Tov and the blessing that he gave for a child, and the child passed away, and the parents wanted to have an understanding why something bad like this happened to them, why they were being punished, and the Baal Shem Tov gave them a view of that hidden world as to what was really going on. If you weren't here at last week's class and you want to listen to that story, it is available on the YouTube site. There is a YouTube site where all these classes are posted a few hours after class. If you want that address, it's youtube.com/Rabbi Moshe Bryski, and there you're able to find all of the recordings. So if you look at last week's class, towards the end is where I had that story. And that was a peek into the hidden world. But we have to be careful that our faith does not diminish our compassion and our protest when we see suffering in this revealed world. Let me explain. If we have faith and we truly believe, and let's suppose the belief is an absolute belief, you truly believe that there is a hidden world, and in that hidden world, there is a reason for everything that happens in this world. So that when even as someone is in pain and is in suffering, we have faith that in that hidden world, there is the explanation as to why they needed to go through this and why indeed it's for their own good. The problem with having that absolute faith is it can very easily diminish your compassion when you see someone that's suffering. Because you can say, oh, don't worry about it. I know you're in pain, but have faith because there's a good reason for this. So you need to always be clear that just because in a hidden world There is a reason for all the pain and suffering. We don't go about saying, just believe, just have faith. Because pain in this world is real, and pain in this world hurts. And when it hurts, we cry out. One of the most powerful passages in all of the Torah is found in the beginning of the book of Exodus, where Moses is watching and experiencing the pain of his brothers as they are enslaved by the Egyptians. And when Moses runs away, and then he gets married, and then he's a shepherd for his father-in-law, and then he meets a burning bush, and God in this burning bush tells him, you need to go back and you need to lead the people out of Egypt, and you are my messenger, and you will be my emissary, and you will redeem the people. And as you've heard from me, Moses argues back and forth, and that goes on for some time. And finally, Moses has no choice but to agree to go and lead the Jewish people out of Egypt. But it's not going to be a simple task because he has to deal with a Pharaoh. And when he makes the demand before Pharaoh, and he speaks to Pharaoh in God's name, and he instructs Pharaoh that God has so commanded, let my people go so that they may serve me. Pharaoh says no. And Pharaoh will then go ahead and he will intensify the exile. He will make the suffering so much worse for the Jewish people. He will beat them far worse. The quotas will be impossible. And Moses, upon seeing this, turns to God in a very classic line, a very powerful line, a very controversial line of the Bible, where Moses will say to God, God Almighty, why have you done evil to this people? And why did you ever send me? He uses that word, lama hare osa la'am hazeh. Why did you do evil to this people? It's such a powerful statement coming from the greatest of the greatest actors of our people, the greatest leader of the Bible. Why have you, God, done evil to this people? You see, we have to separate faith that there is a God with faith that everything is okay. Moses knows there's a God. He spoke to God. He has no doubts. But his problem is that he just witnessed the suffering of others. He watched with horror as Jews were being beaten for not fulfilling an impossible quota, and they were crying in pain. They were being whipped. Moses is not about to say, it's okay. There's a hidden world somewhere where this all makes sense. Although I can't make any sense of it, but I have absolute faith that in the hidden world, this all makes sense. He won't say that. He fights, he battles, he complains, he demands, because it's not okay. It's not a condition he can accept. And what's most surprising is God's response to Moses' challenge. There is none. There's a response to Moses, but not one that responds to Moshe's question. Moshe asked a question, why have you done evil to this people? God will talk to him about what his task will be tomorrow. God will ensure him that indeed the Jewish people will be going free. But he never responded to the question. He never answered the question. He never said anything that would silence Moshe's attacks. He didn't say, Moshe, where's your belief in the hidden world? Don't you believe that I, God, have a plan for anything and for everything? He doesn't say, Moses, don't you dare talk to me that way. That would have been a fair response. Here's an individual that's training to be the leader of the Jewish people for the next 40 years, and he talks to God with such chutzpah. God doesn't say that to him. The earth doesn't open up and swallow him. God assures him that all will be well. But he offers no excuse and no justification for the suffering. Now, I'm sure he could have. He could have given Moses a glimpse of that hidden world so that Moses would have understood why what happened had to happen. I am sure God had a reason. I am sure God could have shown him. But God chose not to respond to Moses on this accusation. God chose not to show Moses that hidden world, not to reveal to Moses why bad things happen to good people. And on top of that, God chose to keep Moses' verbal attacks left in the Bible unanswered. When God puts together the text of the Bible, and he does it at Sinai, he could have easily deleted that line. He could have not included it in the Bible. But no, he includes Moses' attack on him, on God. He leaves it in so that every one of us, ever, forever, for all eternity, studying the text of the Bible, everyone that's in any hotel room in the world that gets bored at night and takes the Bible out of the dresser and starts reading the book of Exodus will find Moses saying to God, "Why have you done evil to your people?" And will not have any response from God to that accusation, to that charge, to that attack. Why would God leave the attack in and not respond to it? So that we, sitting here today on our Zoom, thousands of years later, discussing a most difficult subject, will know that it's okay for us to question, that it's okay for us to struggle, that it's okay for us to ask the question, why, God? I'll go a step further. Not just that it's okay if we do, not just for that moment that we struggle with our faith and we say, God, how can bad things happen to good people? I'll go a step beyond that. God wants us to question him. God wants us to wrestle with him. God wants us to question him when it comes to the suffering of others. He never wants us to become comfortable with it. He never wants us to use our faith to be able to tell people, don't worry about your pain. Don't worry, have faith, it's going to be okay. He wants that when we see someone in pain, that we cry out from the depths of our heart and our souls, Lama Hare Osa. Why are you doing this to this person? This person deserves better. I expected better from you, God. It's so honest. It's so true. We don't have to hide our true feelings, nor should we. We struggle with it, and it's okay to admit that we struggle with our faith when it comes to the pain and suffering, especially of others, especially of our loved ones. And we don't make peace with it. We make peace with God, but we don't make peace with the suffering. Yes, I have faith that there's a hidden world in which all of this will make sense, but guess what? I don't live in that hidden world. I live here. And here in this world, I struggle with understanding it. There's a story, I may have shared it at the Wednesday afternoon class. I've definitely shared it at other talks, of a Rosh Yeshiva, a dean of a rabbinical school. And he would often talk philosophy to his students and teach them philosophy. And there's a teaching in the Talmud that says, it's a difficult teaching, but it says, just like one blesses God and thanks God for the good that happens in their life, they should also bless God when bad things happen in their lives. It's a teaching. That's why at when we hear upon the passing of someone at a funeral, we say, Baruch Dayan HaEmes. We bless God, the ultimate judge of the world. We should bless God even when bad things happen. So a student picks up their hand and says, I don't understand. How do you thank God when bad things happen? And the rabbi went on, as I explained at the end of last week's class, that there's a hidden world, and in the hidden world, there's a reason for everything. And we have to tune into that faith that everything in that hidden world really makes sense. And therefore, even bad things that for us, for our naked eyes, do not look good, trust God that it's good. Okay. A tragedy took place. There was a car accident. And this dean of the rabbinical school, his daughter was in that car, and his daughter didn't survive. Now, he was in the middle of teaching when this accident took place, the teacher, the father. So he was not aware of the accident. But rumors started spreading throughout the school. And the students heard about it. And the students realized someone's got to break the news to him. He's got to get home. He can't be here. Someone has to tell him. No one wants that task. So one student says, you know what? I'll do it. And he says, Rebbe, can I talk to you? He says, sure, certainly. He said, you know, a few weeks ago, you taught us this kishem shemavorach ala tov, mavorach ala ra, that just like you thank God for the good, you thank God for the bad. I've been thinking about it, and I really, really can't understand it. I don't understand. So he says, I explained to you, there's a hidden world. In the hidden world, everything is really for the good. So the student says, so does that mean that just like you were to dance at your daughter's wedding, is the same way you would dance at hearing bad news? You know, your daughter's wedding is a moment of joy and you dance because you're expressing your joy. Are we supposed to have that same type of emotion when it comes to hearing bad news, that we're thanking God with the joy and we start dancing? To which the Rebbe said, philosophically speaking, yes. To which the student said, Rebbe, start dancing. And the Rebbe was perplexed. What do you mean start dancing? And he told him the tragedy. There was an accident. Your daughter was in the car and she didn't survive. And he fainted. He was revived. And he sees the student who broke the news to him. And he says this line to the student. Suddenly, that teaching in the Talmud makes no sense to me. You see, there's an intellectual, there's a philosophical understanding perhaps of suffering, but it doesn't work for the one who is suffering, for the one who is in pain. That's not a time for philosophy. That's a time for compassion. That's a time for warmth, for understanding. That's a time to complain to God. You see, the atheist or the agnostic has very little to complain about, at least when it comes to God. You can't blame a God that you don't believe in, nor can you blame a God that has nothing to do with you. See, the struggle that we have, and every one of us have it, the struggle that we have in dealing with the Holocaust, it is the unanswerable question, right? If ever you go to a question and answer session, there's a rabbi up there, he's talking about one subject, and then suddenly question and answers, and the hand goes up, where was God during the Holocaust? There is no answer. They can philosophize from today to tomorrow. There is no answer. Why? Because once you ask that question, where were you, God? It implies that there's a belief in God. The atheist can't ask, where was God during the Holocaust? The believer asks that question. And the believer struggles with that question because no matter what you answer me, we expected more from you, God. You can go to a class, on a philosophical class, on trying to understand the meaning of suffering, the benefit of suffering, how we become better from suffering. All of that you can do, right? You can read books and books and books on it. And then watch one Holocaust film and watch them round up children for concentration camps and gas chambers and tell me what happens with your philosophy. Because pain and suffering is real. And that's why when it comes to questions like this, we end up like Moses ends up. God, why are you dealing in such a way with your people? And going back to God's response to Moses, what God does is he builds the faith that indeed there will be redemption. You will see, Moses, I will take them out. It's not a lost cause. There will be happiness. There will be redemption. There will be freedom. But God is also very careful about not suppressing the compassion that Moses demonstrated for his fellow. And that's so critical for us to understand that faith does not and should not contradict compassion for one who is suffering. That faith does not and should not contradict crying out when one is in pain. That faith does not and should not contradict wrestling and even being upset with God about a tragedy. In fact, it's only because we have faith that we can. And here's the powerful teaching. Not only are we to relate to pain in this world as being real, as we started with last week's class, God himself feels our pain and suffers along with us. Bechol tzarosam, in all of our tsaris, loi tsar, God suffers with us. So you can ask why? Why is he suffering with us? He knows the hidden world. He's the creator of the world. He's the controller of the world. And the answer is he suffers because we are suffering. And he's close with us. And he feels our pain because he's close to us. When you see someone that you're close to hurting, automatically you hurt. Is your foot hurting? No, but someone you care about's foot is hurting, it hurts. When your baby is teething and fetching and crying, you hurt. When your baby falls and is crying, you hurt. When your baby has a splinter, you hurt. You feel the pain. When you take your baby for an immunization, and you have the intellectual capacity to understand that the immunization is for your child's own good, and yet you're crying, your baby is crying in the pain for the pain of the immunization. You cry with your child. Don't tell me, moms out there, that you don't have a tear in your eye when your baby is screaming. You know why they're having the immunization. You understand it intellectually, and yet there's a tear in your eye. Why is there a tear in your eye? Because it's your child that's crying. God cries with us even though he understands the immunization. But we are his children. And we are in pain. And so he is in pain. God knows the rest of the story. He knows the deeper outcome. He knows the future history. He knows that the pain is somehow in the hidden world, something that's for the good. He knows the medical reasons for the immunization. He knows what the immunization is there to protect. But right now, in this snapshot, the baby is crying. We are that baby. We are crying when we feel pain, when we suffer a tragedy, when we go through difficult times, when we're depressed, when we're lonely. We are in pain, and God therefore is in pain with us. It's an emotional pain. And that's what it means, the verse that I said last week, we are the nerve ends of God. We are so connected to God that if we hurt, he hurts. That's a powerful relationship. Now, to bring this home to our person-to-person relationships, we have to emulate God. All of these teachings about God's divine attributes and God's attributes of mercy is so that we learn from them, so that we have them, and we try to have them in our lives, and we try to live up to them. So when it comes to our own neighbors, we have to look at it that we are all related to one another. For their souls are united together with our souls. We're all brothers and sisters. We are related to one another. And just as when your brother or sister is in pain, you're in pain, so too we have to feel that way with each and every single one of our brethren. We are a family, and we have to feel like a family. So when you find out that your fellow is in pain, lo yitzar, do you feel it? Do you experience it? And if you do, what are you going to do about it? How are you going to heal? And if you can't perform a miracle, you can definitely offer love. You can offer compassion. You can offer an embrace. You can offer a kind word. You can just be there for them and experience it and feel that pain along with them, just like God does with us. The Jewish people are referred to as Yaakov Chevel Nachaloso, Jacob, the portion of his heritage. That word Chevel also means rope. You have to look at the Jewish people as tied together with one single rope. If we're tied together with one rope, if you pull one end of the rope, you move everything that's connected to it along its entire length. Every Jewish action creates a Jewish reaction, and therefore we're connected to each other in a far deeper way than meets the eye. Beyond the clothes we wear, beyond our political affiliations, even beyond what we believe and what we practice, there is something that binds us to one another that is so powerful, that is so deep, that is so unbreakable. We are truly and actually souls in common. Our history and our destiny are one. Even if we don't look alike, even if we don't think alike, even if we disagree on just about every single subject out there, our history and our destiny are one. So do we have that attribute of mercy that God has? That God feels our pain even though he knows the hidden reason for the pain. And yet he feels that pain. Do we feel that way for our fellow? Do we live with that? Or do we brush it off with faith? It's all going to be okay. Don't worry. It's all going to be okay. No need to cry. It's all okay. That's the easy way out. That's the cop out. And it's just not real, and it's cold. If someone's experiencing suffering, be there for them. Reb Shmuel of Lubavitch once said, hundreds of angels eagerly await for one Jew to speak honest praise about another, to say something nice about your fellow. We're pretty good at putting people down. So the angels wait for that moment when someone actually gets up and praises someone else. Why? Because those angels know how much God yearns to hear the praises of his children said by his children. I want to ask you a question. You know the word nachas, right? Nachas. You should be blessed with nachas. What gives a parent the greatest nachas? Nachas is pride. It's a deeper word than pride. It's hard to describe it. It's nachas, when you kvel. So your kid comes home with a good report card. Nice. Got all A's. You're proud. Nachas. The teacher wrote in the comment box, it's a pleasure to have you tatala in my class. Nachas. It's real. It's good. It's good. Your kid wins a contest. Nachas. Your kid cleans up from the table. Nachas. All good, right? But there's no greater nachas than watching your children get along with one another and caring for one another and being there for one another. That's why the greatest song that we have, we all sing it, is Hine Matov Umanayim Sheves Achim Gam Yachad. What does it mean? How beautiful it is when the brothers are getting along. We know so much about disunity, right? We've been there as a Jewish people. But the opposite is also true. When we're there for one another, God looks back down and says, wow, nachas. That's nice. That's nice to see. One year on Yom Kippur, in the middle of services, Rabbi Schneur Zalman, the first Rebbe of Chabad, suddenly interrupted his prayers, very quietly removed his talis and his kittel. Kittel is the white robe that you wear on Yom Kippur. And he walks out of the synagogue without saying a word. And the people in the congregation were totally mystified. The Alter Rebbe, he was famous for his deep spiritual meditation, for his intensity during the high holiday prayers. Where could he be going in the middle of Yom Kippur services? But you don't question a Rebbe He left. He must have a reason. But a couple of the Hasidim took it upon themselves to walk out and to follow behind the Rebbe to see what he was up to. They tried to hang back so as not to be seen. And the Rebbe is walking at a very quick pace. And he walked throughout the streets of Liozna, where he lived, until he arrived at a small cottage at the outskirts of the city. And they then watched in utter shock as the Rebbe grabbed a hatchet that lay nearby, and he began to chop wood vigorously. Remember, it's Yom Kippur. It's forbidden to chop wood on Yom Kippur, and there he is, chopping wood. They're looking at each other, but no one's going to jump out and say anything. He then gathers the pile of wood, and he enters this cottage. Lying in a bed in that particular cottage was a woman, a widow. Her husband had passed away during her pregnancy, and she had just given birth. And her newborn child was crying in the cradle. But the woman was too ill, too sick, too weak, and too helpless to move to attend to the child. And these congregants, they watched through the window as the Rebbe starts a fire on the stove. And he warms up a bottle of milk for the baby. And he cooks up a pot of soup for the mother. So while the whole congregation is reciting the Ne'ilah prayers on Yom Kippur in the synagogue, the saintly Rebbe, the Rabbi Schneur Zalman, sat there and he fed this mother and helped her regain her strength. Later, people in the community, they asked the Rebbe, surely someone else could have done what you could have sent someone to do this. Someone else could have attended to this woman. Did the Rebbe himself have to leave the synagogue during the holiest of moments? Why didn't you just tell someone to do it? Reb Schneur Zalman answered this, that when the holiday has to be violated in order to save a life, you don't go delegating that to others. You grab the mitzvah yourself and you go and you do. But that's the ultimate height of the Yom Kippur service. Sure, I could have sent someone else, but that would have meant it wasn't important enough for me. And I needed to make a statement that when you help someone, it's the greatest of the great. When we stand before God and we're asking for mercy and for compassion and for benevolence and for all the best in life, the only way such requests can have any credibility is if we're prepared to exemplify those same qualities in our disposition towards others. The environment that we create is the environment we live in. So if we're compassionate and we're caring and we're benevolent towards others, then we will merit those same blessings in our own lives. You've heard me talk quite often about Viktor Frankl. I'm a big fan of Viktor Frankl's teachings. If you haven't read his book, Man's Search for Meaning, right after class is over, go on Amazon and purchase his book, Man's Search for Meaning, by Viktor Frankl. And he writes that while he was in the concentration camps, there were those among them who thought that if you can get an extra piece of bread to put in your mouth, then perhaps you would survive. My thinking, he said, was that if I can get an extra piece of bread and give that to someone else, that's how I would survive. And indeed, that is how he did survive. As he wrote, the Nazis could not take away my capacity to give hope to my fellow prisoners. And it was this drive to care for another human being that kept Viktor Frankl alive. A story of a little more modern times, the Lubavitcher Rebbe was once walking from 770 Eastern Parkway, which was the headquarters of the Chabad movement. It still is in Brooklyn, New York. And he was walking out during a weekday to his car. And this nudnik came out of nowhere, jumped in front of the Rebbe to ask the Rebbe questions. So the walkway was literally just a number of feet, but one understood. If you couldn't wait online for weeks and weeks or months or years and years to get a private appointment, You would try to sabotage. You would jump in front of the Rebbe and ask your question. So here the Rebbe is walking out of the synagogue to get into a car that was waiting for him. And this nudnik came from nowhere, just jumped in front of the Rebbe and started talking to the Rebbe. You know what a nudnik is, right? Well, just as a quick Yiddish vocabulary lesson for you, right? There's a shlemiel, you've heard of that. There's a shlemazel, and there's a nudnik. 3 different types of Jews. The shlemiel is a guy who spills the soup while he's serving it. That's the shlemiel. The shlemazel is the guy he spills the soup on. The nudnik, he's the guy that goes to the shlemazel while his pants is on fire and says, "Excuse me, what kind of soup is that?" That's the nudnik. Okay, the nudnik always has a question. So this nudnik approaches the Rebbe as he's leaving the synagogue and starts to talk the Rebbe's ear off. The Rebbe's secretary, Rabbi Label Groner, tries to sort of gently yank this guy out of the way. To try to, all right, come on, you've had your time, let the Rebbe go. And at that point, the Rebbe turns to Rabbi Groner, and Rabbi Groner told this story himself. Rabbi Groner of blessed memory, when he was in the Gura Hills, he spoke years ago, he told this story. And the Rebbe gave him a look, like, back off. Let him ask his questions. And Rabbi Groner backed off. Later that day, back in the Rebbe's office, Rabbi Groner was in there, and the Rebbe says to Rabbi Groner, "Was schleppst du avek a Yid?" Why do you pull a Jew away from me? Why do you pull him away? What were you trying to do? He's trying to talk to me. Do you know that it's very possible, the Rebbe said, that my entire purpose of existence, the whole reason God gave me life on this earth, may very well be so that I would be there today to listen to that man, to help him with his problem today. Lubavitcher Rebbe, with a following of millions throughout the world, who impacted the entire landscape of world Jewry. And in his mind, it's all about that one person, that one nudnik, in that place, at that time. That at that moment, that's the most important thing I could be doing. I'll conclude with one more story about the Rebbe. The United States Post Office backed this up, that the Rebbe would get more mail than any other person in the United States. And every single day, a truck would pull up with sacks and sacks and sacks of mail that would come to the Rebbe's office in Brooklyn from all over the world. And you would get thousands upon thousands of letters on a given day. More astounding was the fact that the Rebbe would not allow any of his secretaries to open his mail. It was to protect confidentiality. He would open every envelope himself. So there was an individual that lived in Crown Heights who felt very badly that the Rebbe had to spend so much time tearing open envelopes, let alone personally responding to each issue. But why would the Rebbe have to sit and tear open envelopes? It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. So he went out and he bought this electric envelope opener. It's a machine. You put the envelopes through a machine and it slits it open for you. And he presents this machine to the Rebbe's secretary to please bring this to the Rebbe as a gift for me. A few minutes later, the Rebbe sends it back out to give it back to the fellow. And the Rebbe said, it's too noisy. It makes a lot of noise, and the noise distracts me. It distracts my thinking. So this gentleman was not about to give up. He calls the manufacturer, I believe it was a Panasonic item, and he asks, does Panasonic make a silent model envelope opener? So the person on the phone actually knew the products, and the person said, we actually did once make it, but we discontinued it because it was very expensive, because to put in the silencing mechanism, it cost a lot and no one would buy it. So we started with that years ago, but we never followed through on it. We made a few prototypes, but that's it. So now we just make the noisy one. So he says, but I want to buy one of those original prototypes. So the fellow says it doesn't, no one will know where to find it. He says, but I'm willing to pay. He says, I'm telling you, it doesn't exist. He says, I'll pay a lot. The person on the phone says, but we don't carry it. We don't have it. He says, no, I'll pay a lot, a really lot. The person says, okay, let me look for one. And sure enough, he's able to make this purchase of a model that didn't exist on the open market, of this silent envelope opener. So he now brings that to 770, all excited, all proud that he solved the problem. It's a noiseless envelope opener. And he brings it to the Rebbe's secretary to bring into the Rebbe. A few minutes later, the secretary is carrying it right back out the office again. What now? So he came with a comment from the Rebbe. First of all, thank you very much for trying. But I can't use the silent one either. Why? So the Rebbe said this line, and this is the important part to remember. Different Jews seal their envelopes in different ways. Some people seal their envelopes by licking it. Others might use a sponge. Others might use an applicator. Some may use Scotch tape. Some may use glue. But there are many that seal their envelopes mit der Tränen, with their tears. They seal their envelopes with their tears. They're writing to me about sorrows. They're writing to me about difficulties. They're putting their emotion into this letter. That letter is sacred to me. I can't take that letter and put it into some machine. The letter represents the heart and the soul and the pain and the suffering of my fellow Jews. I need to hold that envelope. I need to feel that envelope. I need to feel the soul of my fellow by holding that envelope. When the Rebbe opened those letters with his hands, it wasn't just the written words of the letters itself that he perceived. He saw beyond the veil. He felt the pain and the sorrow that went beyond the words themselves. He touched and he felt the tears that came along with that envelope and that no machine can feel. Only human hands, only a human heart, only a soul. That's what the Rebbe felt. Did the Rebbe not have faith? Did the Rebbe not know about the hidden world? Did the Rebbe not know that there's a reason for all this pain? Of course he knew. Of course he believed. He had absolute faith. But at the same time, this individual that was writing to him, that was begging him for a blessing and for guidance or for advice, they were in pain. And for that, he cries out, Lama hare osa la'am hazeh. The Rebbe would cry out to God like Moses, please heal this broken heart. Heal the pain of my fellow. That's the compassion that Moses is pleading with us, the Jewish people, to feel for our fellow as we go through the history and the destiny of life, of our existence, of our journey of the Jewish people. May God indeed heal all of our pain. May God wipe away all of our tears. May God indeed bring a solution and a salvation and redemption to all of the world with the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, which should happen speedily in our days. Have a wonderful week, everybody. Stay healthy, stay well, and we'll see you all back. Some of you join me Monday evenings at 7:30 for our discussion of the stories of the Bible, and the rest of you, hopefully I'll see you back next Wednesday at 12:30. Take care, everyone.